Hi, everyone. Welcome back. We're going to get started on our second panel, which is the Students and Parents Community Perspectives panel. I'll just introduce myself briefly before I start moderating this session. My name is Sally, and I mentioned earlier I'm a senior research assistant, and I am finishing my Master's of Social Work degree at the University of Toronto Factor Inwintosh Faculty of Social Work. And I'm going to pass it now to Judine.
Hi, I'm Judine Allen. I'm a parent of a student that is a part of the Yaaace program. I think the most important thing is I'm a parent. I love children. I love the Black community. I want to see us elevate ourselves and our community, and I'm here to make a change. I'll pass it off to my son, JaJuan.
Hello, my name is JaJuan Bailey. I am a student athlete, grade 7, 12 years old. I am a part of the Yaaace program and community, and I am also a Spirit of Math student with Mr. Jones and Nias.
My name is Jesiah and Nias. I am 14. I'm also a part of the Yaaace community and program. I have been with Yaaace since grade 3, and I'm currently 14 years old. I will now pass it to Trust.
Hello, my name is Trust. I'm 13 years old. I've been with Yaaace since grade 5, and I'm also a part of the Spirit of Math student community with Yaaace.
Thank you. So for the first question, how and when did you first join Yaaace, and what programs did you access? And I'll start it with the students first.
I was in grade 5 when I first joined Yaaace. I came to the Saturday D-League program, and a former coach who used to coach here saw me and had a lot of confidence, so he brought me to the second gym where the rep players used to play, and that's where it all started.
I started with Yaaace when I was in grade 3. I've been playing with them ever since. My dad just got a call from his friend. He introduced me to the coaches, and they accepted me pretty fairly, and it was an easy start.
Awesome. Thank you.
I've also been with Yaaace since grade 3. To be honest, I just loved the sport, loved basketball, and we saw what Yaaace was doing, and we felt very confident in the owners and the higher ups that they can be a big part in me becoming a good young Black man in the society today.
So I joined, I guess I'm the sidekick. I joined with JaJuan when he was in grade 3. With entering the community, Yaaace organization, I just felt at home, and my heart is here, and I am helping and hoping to support as best as possible. So it's been a long time, long journey, and I look forward to many, many more years.
Thank you. Hopefully that gives you an idea of the voices on the panel today. Our second question is, how has Yaaace and the Community School Initiative contributed and supported your success during COVID-19? Can start with Judine.
So during COVID, it's a challenging time. I work from home. It's quite difficult to work from home and have the children be engaged with online learning. I found that the organization in general, irrespective of what programs they put forward, I find it's a safe place for my child. It is home away from home. It is a community and an organization that I know is here for my child's success. I feel confident and comfortable with the kids, my child, being in the program. I know the coaches, I know that their heart is to propel my child's success, both on the basketball field, court, and outside of the basketball court. Initially, the Spirit of Math program I was in Spirit of Math before I came to Yaaace, and I introduced it to Mr. Jones. And just having JaJuan being that child that everyone can say, oh, he's been through the program, he's accelerating through the program, it just helps. And since then, and with COVID, they've given additional support. We're able to get good support from Kim. Having those programs, for example, we had summer programs. There's places that they could go, if not physically. They have online practices, online learning. You have teachers available. If it's not the teachers, you have parents available just to parent my child. So I find it was a great network to have during COVID-19 just for mental health and continuing his education.
Thanks, Judine. A conversation we were having just before this was about safe space, and you mentioned it right now. So can you just describe what a safe space is to you and what it means like to send your child to this school every day?
A safe space for me allows my child to bring his authentic self to the school. It allows my child to be who he is, who I taught him to be, and do so freely without being judged. I can tell you personally, in my organization, which I will not name because I didn't get permission to speak today, but in my organization, for example, and in any organization, as an immigrant, as a Jamaican, I have to check myself before I go through the door. I have to ensure that my language is acceptable, I sound good, right, and I fall in place. But with Yaaace, my child is able to be who he is. He's able to bring his culture and be JaJuan, the Jamaican, the black young kid that is able to succeed. So that is, for me, that's a safe space, to be able to bring your authentic self to wherever you go.
I love that. And as part of the research that we did, we found some of the challenges with that you were talking about, maybe adequate space at home for a child to learn, or maybe struggles with internet or technology. What are the challenges that maybe you had to overcome? What barriers were there because of COVID-19 specifically?
So we continue to face, I think my child right now, he's online still, and I continue to face the struggles of supervision. It's a large classroom. The teachers have, how many students? 20 something or whatever number of students. When they were online, it's difficult to monitor a child. The camera is not on. I'm at work, I'm in a meeting, he's upstairs or wherever he is doing his schoolwork. I don't know what he's doing. I know that, to be honest, you have, the phone is going with TikTok, the classroom is going on the laptop. I know he's not engaged. But I know that for sure, if a coach were present in that classroom, if a coach was there, if I knew if my son knows that Coach Jordan, for example, is present in that atmosphere, he's gonna check himself, 100%. The coaches are so influential on our children, it is unbelievable. And I'm telling you, even during COVID-19, to have a coach check in. I recall Coach Jordan had a couple of sessions where he touched base with the kids every Friday. It was Friday evenings, and these kids can speak to it. And they look forward to the conversation just to hang with the coach. I guess mommy and daddy is not as cool as coach, but I'm thankful that there's somebody that they can listen to. There's somebody that they can be comfortable with, and there's somebody that will push them alongside me.
I love that. So I'll just repeat the question since we maybe went a little bit off there. But so the question was, how has the Yaaace and the Community School Initiative contributed and supported your success during COVID-19? You can start.
COVID-19 was very stressful, especially me being online, because you know, I have a lot of siblings, first of all, and you know, it's very noisy, because you know, my siblings are still young. You know, I kept stepping out of online class to, you know, go help them, because you know, my siblings are still young, so they don't really know how to really operate their own computers, but they're still gonna know and they're still gonna learn. So yeah, and me online is not hard, but I'd rather in person because it's more self-accurate to learn face-to-face with a different teacher. Because online, there's many things other people do that teachers don't know of, because some of them are probably like playing video games or like watching a different screen, and the teachers are aware, but they know that some of them don't really want to learn, so they only teach the kids who want to learn, and the kids who don't want to learn, they're on their own.
Yeah, so like during COVID-19, it was obviously very hard for learning in person. So Yates really gave us like a space to go to and something to look forward to, you know, someone to talk to reach out to during those hard times. And just like Trust said, online learning was very easy to get distracted or to do something that you shouldn't be doing. And I just feel like Yates really helped me throughout COVID, and well, they still are.
During COVID-19, especially in the summertime, we had a program, the Health and Wellness Institute, where throughout all of the day, we had different, like a whole schedule, different things that we had to attend on a Zoom meeting where it comes to workouts, school, Spirit of Math on some Saturdays, and it just kept us kind of like Yayace summer camp, active and not let us like lying home doing nothing. And it was just a good influence to have such a program that cares about me and my learning and my success in my life and the rest of my career and how long I'm gonna live. And it was just a great summer and a great time, COVID-19, although we didn't get to see each other face to face as much.
Can you talk a little bit actually about that program? I think it's new and maybe we didn't talk about it enough. You said the health and wellness, and yeah.
So during the summer 2020, we had the Health and Wellness Institute. It consists of like learning about what good things we should be putting in our body first thing in the morning. We had to complete a 2-mile run each day or every other day if I'm not mistaken. And we had many workouts throughout the day, each day Monday through Friday, and then on Saturdays we go to the Spirit of Math to keep our learning in the summer as well. And the cooking in the morning, and it was just like teaching us to become great young men, to be honest.
I love that. Thank you for everyone for your insights. Our third question is, what is the biggest challenge in the Black and racialized community right now when it comes to education and especially access to opportunities? We started this side, so let's start this side.
The biggest challenge I've seen is that we're not getting the attention we deserve. And what's causing that? We often get stereotyped, I've seen. When a child expresses themselves, a Black child expresses themselves, whether it's frustration because they're not getting it, unfortunately they're streamlined into being aggressive, being inappropriate in the classroom, and then they're not getting the attention that they want, unfortunately. Another issue we all face is that the parents are not affluent, they're not educated, they're not able to help their children as much, and the teachers need to understand that there needs to be a little bit more hands-on help with our Black children. We don't have access to the opportunities that exist in other communities because we don't have the funds to get there. Spirit of Math, for example, as I had said, JaJuan was in Spirit of Math, but it's a challenge to keep your son in a program that costs significant amount of money each year. But I was able to get through that challenge, but not all can even attempt to enroll their child in such a program. There are just not enough doors open for the Black community, unfortunately. And what I've found as you get into organizations, the funnel effectively started off large. So there's a large community that exists in the schools. But then the funnel starts to get smaller and smaller. By the time you reach to the universities, et cetera, you start seeing there are less Black students enrolled in universities. And the reason why, we're losing them from the start because the opportunities are just not available for them to enhance or improve themselves, improve their grades. So doors just keep locking as they make it throughout life. By the time you get to the university, only 2 is probably going through the door. So I think it's just opportunities not available. We don't have the network, the strong network that other communities have.
I like how you started off with the micro and you talked about the perspective, so being stereotyped, that immediately impacts the individual, but then you also brought it into the community with the lack of funding and the inaccessibility to programs. Is there anything, that stands out to you right now that you think would maybe solve both issues? Like I'm thinking maybe more teacher training, or is it really at that high level that you're seeing?
That's a good question. It's quite loaded. What stands out to me, I think it's at the macro level that we really need to change. There needs to be, we have to change the thought process on how we get kids to access these different programs and why we need them to access the programs. It's not, we're not trying to propel tokenism. We're not trying to propel that we need to see black children in certain programs, but we're trying to open up the opportunity for them to get into the program. I believe as much, and we had a recent talk at our organization, as many smart kids out there that are not black, there are twice as many black kids that are as smart. But they're just not getting the opportunity in the schools. They're not getting the opportunity in these institutions. And we need organizations and schools that are focused on unlocking the potential within the black community. And we don't have that. And I think it needs to start macro. But what I enjoy and appreciate is that we have grassroots organizations like Yaaace that also help at the micro level. So we need hand in hand, but I think we do need help at the macro level first.
Awesome, thank you. And we can go here, so I'll just repeat it. So what is the biggest challenge in the Black and racialized community right now when it comes to education and access to opportunities?
Like Ms. Judine said before, I could strongly agree. Us black people get a lot of stereotypes. Like for example, if I were to walk with a group of black guys to a store, someone would think, oh, we're there to steal, or we're there to cause a scene or a fight. And I don't think it's really right to judge people of what they look or their race, because everybody's equal and everyone's the same. Because I know if that was a different race, they won't have the same mindset. So I just think people should really slow their roll and let other people do what they want to do freely and not be scared of what other people think about them.
Well, yeah, being black in the school system isn't always the easiest. Like, once you walk into a classroom, your teacher automatically has biases and stereotypes and how they see you, and that really shows how people are, Like, just like Chess said, once you walk into a store, a group of black kids automatically think that it's a problem or you're trying to steal. You're not just there to buy a candy bar or whatever you went in the store to do.
So a follow-up question to both of you, I guess, is how important was it that Yaaace had the representation that you kind of saw yourself in the coaches or the teachers? How important was that to you for when you talk about stereotypes?
It's very important because during classes, they also teach us about our schoolwork and about like environmental work. Like they teach us how to be accurate or like be nice to other people, like be treated the way you want to be treated, because if you treat someone the way you don't want to be treated, it'll be like you're a hypocrite, or like you want other people to like follow your rules. Or like, for example, at school, when you're getting bullied or you're bullying someone, you think you're the cool guy, or you want people to follow you, and I don't think that's the right example to show, especially as me as an intermediate, almost going to grade 9. I don't really think bullying is the right example to show like grade 4s and grade 3s, because as they grow older, they're gonna think, oh, that's a cool thing to do, and they'll wanna follow that. So I don't really think that's a good example to show other people in schools especially.
Yeah, here they teach us a lot of being a better person ourselves, and like just they really help mold the next generation. So like we are better as we grow up being young men, being young black men in the school system and in the world.
I feel like the biggest challenge in our community is that everyone thinks that the only way out for us is sports, like football, basketball, and we're just athletic and all we can do is run and all we can do is jump. I feel like they don't think that we have like the smarts to get to universities and big schools without receiving a scholarship because of how good we are, how talented we are at sports. And I feel like they stereotype us with that, and like in our school systems they don't really see much out of us except for just what we can do on the basketball court. And I think that needs to change, and we need to be able to show people in this country or in America that we're not only athletes, we're student athletes, and we can own big companies or be a manager in big companies, or own the Philadelphia 76ers, own a football team, do this and do that at what all these other races can do, but we don't really have the opportunities to do that because at an age like this, it's just feeded into our minds that we have to be a basketball player, we have to be a football player. We can't, like, we can be managers, we can be owners. That's not the only talent that we have. We're very smart young men, and I feel like our community can raise up to all the other races in this world.
That's awesome. And got a lot of claps right now. And I'm sure people online are also clapping for what you just said. It's a very impactful statement. I'm not sure how we're doing for time. I think, okay, awesome. So we have time for a couple more questions. I guess if you could tell other parents or other students, maybe similar to your age group or in your community, about accessing Yaaace or about getting or overcoming those barriers, like you mentioned, the financial piece or the stereotype piece. Like if you could tell other students or other parents, what would you tell them about what you've sort of lived through? Okay, let's start from the students this time.
I think Yaaace is a good community to come to, especially for young kids who are looking for a good opportunity, because I know it worked for me, and I also think it'll work for other kids. Because when I was growing up, I really loved playing basketball, but I didn't really take it as serious as I do now. And me with Yaaace now, I've learned from the little details to the bigger details, so I think that's what really matters.
Yeah, Yaaace is an amazing program. They really try and make you just the best possible person you can be on the court and off the court. They really push you to your limits, you know? They just make you express who you really are.
There's a saying that it takes a village to raise a child. Yaaace is that village. And parents, I must tell you that it feels comfortable for your child to grow up in this organization because you know that other parents care about your child. You're in a community where if a parent from Yaaace, and I can hold many parents accountable to this, if a parent from Yaaace sees my child outside of Yaaace doing something that he ought not to be doing, they're going to check him. They're not going to go by him. They're not going to see him on the street, whether it be that he needs a ride and not pick him up or call to him and say, hey. I do appreciate and understand that not all parents are the same, but I guarantee that I can find a community, a village in Yaaace. There are so many children, like I'm looking at so many children here, and I know them by name, not because my child plays with the child, but because I've grown up, I've seen them grow up in this organization, and you have a heart for those children. And I encourage parents to be a part of this organization. I know a lot of people will say Jones is trying to do a lot, but at the same time, it's not Jones's responsibility only, it's us as parents. We need to move the bus. Let's not allow one person to move the bus. Let's all get together and move this bus. from in front of our children and allow them to excel. So come on board, parents. Yaaace is the place to be. We can make it what it ought to be, and we can make it great. I also wanted to add that oftentimes our community will look at, oh, the organization must be getting something out of this. So what if an organization is getting something out of your child excelling? If your child is going to excel for the rest of his life, change his trajectory, why not? Many organizations around there are earning something from having your children be a part of their program. It doesn't exist here. I can tell you, the Yaaace is an organization that it's a community, it's a village, and it's a place for your child to grow free and be his greatest potential self.
I feel like with Yaaace, the bottom line of it is that everybody, they all care for each and every person that is within the community. For example, like my mother said, if there's a few kids that after practice their parents are running late, or they don't have a ride, I know I can say that I have took many of my teammates and many of my friends either home, to the subway station, to the bus stop, just to make it easier for them to get to where they need to go. And I know many other parents have done it, and everybody cares. Like, it's not like every other organization, they just throw out a ball and tell you to just, go play on the basketball court. Yaaace wants you to, be a student athlete and not just an athlete, so that you don't have only one opportunity in life, which is basketball. Because what if it doesn't work out? What are you gonna do then? See what I mean? So like, we have to have our academics right too, and our street smarts, which is our smarts, just not book smart, but smarts other than just our books, so that we can become and excel as black young men and show the world what we are capable of.
I love that. Thank you. So there's this final question I'm just really excited to ask. It's called the $1 million question. So it goes like, if you were given $1 million and Yaaace could reinvent the community school initiative, so the partnership with Spirit of Math, the athletics, the whole nine. If you were given that $1 million, what changes would you like to see? So from the student perspective, from the parent perspective, that would strengthen this initiative for you. And we started here, so let's start here, if that's okay. Yeah, Yaaace and the community school initiative, if it could be launched again.
Wow. So what would I like to see? A lot more technology. The kids right now, technology is the leading force. So they need to be exposed to more technology. We just need the infrastructure. We need comfort. So we need proper furniture. Oftentimes, the students are provided desks and chairs and all that, but we need proper facility, we need a good gym. So I would think firstly we need the infrastructure and technology to help the initiative, the community school. We also need help. We need people on board. We need resources. We need coaches. We need teachers. We need that base infrastructure and resources to help this organization.
To be honest, I think we need just a better building. Like, look at where we are now. Like, the school is like, there's nobody really using the school. It's extremely old, and compared to other communities and other races that have a program like Yaaace, they get more modern areas, more modern buildings, facilities to work within. And I feel like Yaaace needs that opportunity to get a better building with more technology, like my mom said, to make kids like want to come to Spirit of Math, or want to come to the school program, and not only basketball, because that's not all that matters.
I can strongly agree with that. If I had $1 million, I would try to, get a better gym for my teammates and I to practice. So, like Ms. Judine said, more furniture, more technology, because, as we all know, that some kids don't really have what many others have. Some of them, like in schools, we have to share computers, share desks, or borrow other chairs. I don't really think it's good, but I don't really think that's how we're gonna live on. I think, we could use $1 million to, buy better resources so we can all live better.
Yeah, just like what everyone's been saying, just more modern facilities, modern technology, all that stuff to help us strive as kids, Anything like computers, desks, tables, basketball equipment, anything to help us really, push as kids and make other people want to come to Yaaace,
Totally understand. It's like that $1 million seems like a lot of money, and what you just mentioned is all good, and hopefully we'll one day get it. So we're gonna now wrap up this session. If there's one last thing that we can start from this side, the students' final word of what it was like to be a part of the community school initiative overall, maybe a strength of the program, something you've learned about yourself, maybe a strategies from the parents' perspective that they've been able to do. Anything that you'd like to mention before we wrap up?
I just want to say, Yaaace is a great community, and it's a great offer for your kids. So don't hesitate to, bring other people, because that's what we're looking for. And yeah.
Yeah, Yaaace is just a great place overall. It's really made me just a better person. I've met new people, went through new experiences I never would have without Yaaace. So, yeah.
Again, for me, the word is just, it's a safe space. It's a safe space for my child to come and advance himself both on the basketball court and in the school. I'm so happy to see kids accelerate after being in the program. I have been in the classroom. I personally have been in the classroom and have seen kids that are in grade 5 and probably are reading at a grade 2 level, or their math is at a grade 2 level. And to see the kids so interested in learning, to see when you push them or you say, you can do it, and they say, yeah, I got it, I finally got it. And they're so they're bouncing off the walls when they get it, which is so encouraging to see. And that's why I think this organization just needs to be propelled to expand, to be able to offer what we are seeing for our children to even more.
Truly, don't hesitate to bring your child to Yaaace, because it is a very comfortable and safe environment to be in. Everybody cares about your child when it comes to mind, your smarts, and your academics. Everybody cares for you and your child, and it's just so very, very, very comfortable, and it allows your children to excel in when it comes to math, literacy. The whole summer we've had multiple summer camps where we've had either spirit of math and literacy, and the following years you have seen the students' grades rise. Their marks go up from whether it was a B to A or a C to a B, and that's all Yaaace just helping them and caring for their academics and not only their sports and what everybody thinks we only do.
So thank you to everyone that's been a part of this conversation and for joining online. I really loved, Judine, what you mentioned earlier about we all have a role to play in moving the bus forward. It's not just one parent's responsibility, it's not just one student's or one teacher or one coach's responsibility. It's all of our responsibility to move the bus forward. So I hope that in the next 15 minutes, people are able to grab a snack, grab a bite, and we will be back with our final panel for the day. And again, I just want to thank you all for your time and thank you all for your thoughts, your answering these questions.
All right, next, let's do negative.
All right, thank you very much. Welcome to the last panel of the day. My name is Dr. Ardavan Eizadirad. I'm an assistant professor in the Faculty of Education at Wilfrid Laurier. It was lovely hearing such wonderful perspectives from everyone all day, especially the last panel with the students and the parents. It was very insightful, and we're grateful for that. We're kind of changing gears to now look at a leadership panel. We have a range of guests who are shortly going to introduce themselves, being in leadership positions, from being teachers in the schools, principals, and school trustees. The theme of the session is how do we mitigate root causes of systemic barriers as it relates to teaching and learning, particularly in racialized under-resourced communities such as Jane and Finch. So my first question, before you answer it, we ask if you could tell us your first and last name and your current role. But the question is, what is one significant barrier to closing the achievement gap that has persisted, and how do we, or how should we tackle it strategically? And just to give you an example, my research has been around EKO standardized testing, and that was introduced in 1996 in the province of Ontario to help identify schools who would need more supports and who have certain needs. But since 1996 to now, even though we have this in place, those gaps have actually intensified and further widened. So at what point do we go back and re-examine our strategy if it's not working? So that's just one example, but please speak from your own location and positionality. Anyone can go first. Maybe we'll go this way.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rohan Robinson. I'm a principal in the TDSB, and fortunately, I've had the pleasure of working in inner city schools for the last 20 years. Now, this question resonates with me because the gaps have been there. With the excellent work of teachers and some parents, some gaps are closing, but it is a hard task. Now, one of the barriers that we face is obviously socioeconomics. Also, there is a disbelief that some of our students can do well because the bar is low for a lot of our students. So as educators and as leaders in these communities, we have to get in there and raise that bar and make our kids believe they can achieve. Otherwise, we're just going to continue this cycle that has continued for years and years, even though there are studies that have come out that have proven that we need to do better. Now, I'll just talk about one quick thing before related. And one of the things that I notice and have advocated for in our schools is we talk about black excellence, and this is not just to even narrow it down to black only, because it also affects other cultures in lower socioeconomic areas. But when it comes to our black kids, for example, I notice that the focus is always on athletics and the arts. We never say, okay, there are a lot of our people that are celebrated that are good in math. I know someone now that is very instrumental in the development of COVID-19 vaccines, but you never hear about these folks that are black, but you hear about the Jordans, you hear about LeBron, you hear about rappers, and I think we do our kids a big disservice when the people that you know are successful are doing these things only, while your chances of becoming a teacher or a principal, a doctor, a lawyer are way higher than your chance of becoming a basketball player or a rapper. It's so hard. So until we start showing ourselves in different lights and actually doing more things to close the gap, for example, maybe even spreading the wealth among schools, because you'll have a school a kilometer from here that gets $300,000 for fundraising, while you have a school like one of the ones I've worked at that will raise probably 500. And yet you're still getting all the money from the board. And how do we spread this so that we can spread the wealth and help our students? Give you a quick example. Don't want to take up all the time though. Quick example. For CAT 7, which is a test that our students do, most of your parents probably know about it. My school, we don't have much resources, so we needed computers. And the test was coming up, and I asked the board, could I have some computers? But the board is going through a shortage as a board anyway. So I had to reach out to a school about 1 kilometer away. I know the principal there, and they're a well-to-do school. And I said, we have 0 devices. Can I have about 2 class sets to do the test? We needed about 4. And she said to me, you know what? I will provide you with 4 class sets. And I said, how are you able to do that? She said, well, we have rich parents here, so our fund is so high, and she lent me the computers to do our tests, and we didn't have to go through an issue, but that's to tell you the gaps and the disparity we face even 1 kilometer away from each other. So maybe we need to balance it out that way. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Very insightful. We'll go maybe to this side, and then we'll come back.
Thank you so much. My name is Li Preti. I'm the trustee with the Toronto Catholic District School Board. And I agree with many of the things that you just said, and I just wanted to say, add on to it, that I think that the systemic gaps in learning, they've been completely exacerbated through COVID. And I think this is an opportunity for us to see how are we going to achieve, where are we going to do better? And it doesn't work in silos. So we have to take a look at everything. We have to look at our parent engagement. We have to look at what we have in our board. It's called EPAN. And I have a really big issue with just the name EPAN because it's Equity Poverty Action Plan. And we don't need to be stigmatized by being an EPAN community. Just the name itself, having the word poverty in the name. So EPAN is a way for the Toronto Catholic District School Board to try and achieve a more equitable access to funds where there are certain school communities like ours in Humber River Black Creek that get extra funding from the board to try and balance out the disparities that we see throughout the entire board. So making sure that the funds that are coming from the board for community schools, that they're actually being used for our students. We want to see them within the students. Another issue that I have with our school board, and we've been raising it now, is students aren't being seen. They're not reflected. We're different than the TDSB in a certain capacity. Our students aren't reflected. So I have a school with maybe 90% of our population are black youth. 98% of our staff are white. It is a huge problem, and we need to address it, and we need to address it now, because if it just keeps going, we're never going to solve the issue. So that's why I'm saying, COVID has been devastating for all of our communities, but we have seen that we need to do better, and we need to do better in communities like ours. But we need to do better across all aspects of a school community, of a local school community. So what does that look like? We need to bring more resources. We need to bring more a balanced approach, and we need students to feel safe in our schools once again, within our walls. I'm going to pass it over to Trustee Mammoliti.
My name's Christopher Mammoliti, and I'm the trustee for TDSB Ward 4, Humber River Black Creek, and the vice chair of the Toronto District School Board. I'm going to build a little bit on what some of the panelists, this panel and the previous panel, spoke to. I think it's about the investment that we put into elements like public education, critical elements like public education. Our focus has always been around equality when it needs to be around equity and building the equity of access. To give an example, we've built the same amount of schools in the last 20 years that we did in the late 1800s. And those schools are predominantly focused on overcapacity, not on communities that have been marginalized and traditionally left behind. So we have to look at those funding logics, and we have to say, how are we allocating the resources that we do have? We have to look at things, and we have to build it. We have to build strategically, and we have to focus on where the need is, as opposed to trying to create a one-to-one or equal equation. We need to look at where the gaps are. As Trustee Li Preti spoke to, we have a lot of information that's come from the pandemic. Quite frankly, we had it before the pandemic. What we have to do now is actually address it. And you cannot do that by saying everybody gets equal, because the world is simply not equal. So what we have to do is we have to identify those gaps, identify those areas, and bring resources directly to those areas strategically to try to focus on those achievement gaps. Organizations like Yaaace are exactly the types of organizations that we need to work with. As a school board, it is not something that we can do alone. We have to work with community organizations and all stakeholders. I think that's a major area where we can improve as a society.
Do you mind if I add one more thing? I'm going to add one more thing, just jumping on. There was a panelist that was here in the panel right before us, a student, and one thing that's really important is making students feel proud of where they're going to school. It is essential that when you walk in a school that you feel proud to be in your school. That means, you know, that the walls aren't falling apart, that the ceiling tiles aren't moldy, that the lights are working. And we need to start this locally within our school communities right here in Humber River Black Creek, because that's what equity is, essentially. Making sure that we are given the priority access that other communities have been getting for decades.
My name is Darrin Salick. I'm teacher at TDSB. I also teach at Yaaace as well. We're talking gaps. We're also, when we talk gaps, we have to talk excellence, expectations, and economic gaps. As a teacher, if you enter a room and you don't see excellence in front of you, you will not have high expectations of those kids, regardless of what age they are, what culture they come from, what race. Now, I've been in classrooms of many other teachers. I'll see a picture, back to your point, of Muhammad Ali on the wall. Great picture, an amazing picture, strong, but if that's all you see of us is athletics, but you don't have a picture, for example, like a Canadian like Lincoln Alexander, of somebody who's accomplished things beyond that point, you only see us as athletes, right? That is standard. A lot of people come in, they see us as excellent in one area and only one area, right? Now, if we're gonna talk gaps, economic gaps, the school board, TDSB, the Ministry of Education have to ask themselves just one question. Why are there so many private programs opening up, I wanna say daily, but I didn't do the count, constantly to compensate for what the public system is not doing? This is what the question is about, right? There's a gap. Why are all these programs? You could shake the tree and the leaves would fall with all the private programs that are out here, and that is an indication of failure of the public school system.
Can I add something? I'll just add something quick. And to add to the point of how we're represented in education and just the media in general, I had a discussion a couple of months ago with a panel again, and as I said, I've been in the TDSB for around 20 years now, and I've never been, actually this last week was the first time I was ever mistaken for a teacher. I've been mistaken for a parent, an intruder, and I've been mistaken for a hall monitor, which every job's important, I get it, but it's never one of those jobs where it's like a teacher or a principal. I've actually approached people in my schools now, and sometimes I'm even dressed like this, and I'm asked, what do you do here? Why are you talking to me? So I think what we need to do, changing that narrative, and it's not just for our kids to see, but for others to see that we're like this too, and then our kids will see it, and it will translate to a broad society changing their mindset on what they see. I'm mistaken for, if I ask people, I'll play this game all the time, what do you think I do? Because they ask me what I do, and I say, take a guess. And there's all these things, oh, you're an athlete, or you were an athlete, or something. But it's never academics, and this really bothers me because I know so many people in the city of Toronto and beyond that are doing well and are providing excellence, and it's not based on sports or the arts, it's based on math, science, STEM, all that stuff. So that's what I believe.
Yeah, thank you for everyone for sharing. I think you speak to the microaggressions that racialized folks experience on a daily basis. I I think I want to try to shift the conversation to institutions. I know we're talking about systems, but eventually systems are made out of people. And so it's kind of a tricky balance of, do we blame individuals, do we blame institutions, but really how are we constructive so we're actually doing something about it and it's not just critique? Because critiquing is easy, but how do we get our hands dirty? The example was used in an earlier panel, everybody needs to be part of moving the bus. And I think something that institutions do, and I work within an educational institution at a post-secondary level, and having been with the Toronto District School Board, is when we have one person who makes it, right? Let's say, they're black, they're Muslim, they grew up in poverty, single-parent household. We really glorify that story. We want to put it on our websites. We want to tell their story. And what we do is we're trying to tell everybody else, if you worked hard enough, you should have made it too, which is really a faulty narrative, because for every one that made it, there's 100 who are either dead or locked up, as we see most recently with a shooting at David Mary Thompson, right? So when it comes to policy and practices, what would you say is a policy we need? Maybe it doesn't exist yet. Based on your experience, you think it should be a policy. Maybe it's a policy you think we need to revise. So what is one policy you think to assist an equity approach to doing community work? Because a lot of times policy is so rigid and it treats everybody the same. It treats all schools the same, and it doesn't create that flexibility to be equitable to the local needs of the school and the community. So kind of from your own locations and experiences, what's one policy you think we need or we should change to advance, once again, an equity approach to community work? And maybe we'll start with the trustees.
I think one area of improvement, one area that we can look at is funding again, but in this case it's around focus on youth, community use of schools. The recognition of how important our community schools are to our communities and the foundation of those communities. Being able to support local programs, grassroots programs within our physical education institutions where our students do feel comfortable. I think that's really, really important to be able to provide that environment and opportunity for those organizations to be able to set up and also bring those youth in and actually start to develop in a comfortable environment. I think that's one area where we've seen cuts very recently and throughout time, not just recently. And we have to start to reinvest into community. Remember that public schools are a heartbeat of our community, which means we have to fund them like they are. And right now, we're not doing that. I think that's one area we can seriously improve.
Yeah, Trustee Mammoliti said it brilliantly. I don't even know if I would add anything else onto it, because it's exactly what we need to do. The community use of schools. There was a line item that Mr. Devon Jones, he always, in every conversation, he keeps instilling in me that we have to bring back, the province needs to bring back. It's education other, because that's been, that's missed. And we're gonna work really hard on getting that line item back so that students, community organizations like Yaaace have the opportunity to continue using school spaces. It's vital. Another area I think that we should, another area, and I'm probably gonna get in trouble with this one, is we need people like Devon Jones, Mr. Devon Jones, who does not take no for an answer. And when you want something done, there's a lot of red tape when it comes to school boards. You hear no a lot. Or we'll see, we'll get back to you. And it takes a really long time. So I think one thing that we need to do in areas like ours is cut this red tape, because we're waiting so long. These kids are gonna be, graduating high school by the time we want to achieve anything. So that's another area that we need focus is like cutting the red tape in order to get the opportunities for the youth, especially Black and marginalized communities like ours. There's just too much red tape. There's just too much waiting. There's too much we're gonna get back to you. Getting things done and getting things down immediately, properly. Have it speed through so that we're not waiting. And so I wanna just say thank you to programs like Yaaace, who really keep trustees like me and Chris accountable to you, the parents. Thank you so much.
I'm not much for knowing much about the policy, but my first year teaching in the Jane and Finch area. I had the privilege of working with some kids that went through a program that was called, I think it was called Scholarship or Enrichment, where the elementary schools, I taught at the middle school, and the elementary schools had a program where kids would go from one elementary school to the next based on their strengths. Literally, if they enjoyed science, once a week they'll go do science at another school with a lot of kids who are interested in science. If it was French, they'll do that. If it was English, if it was math. And I had the privilege of teaching those kids. They were amazing because I taught at a gifted school and they were way more on the ball. There's good programs that policy sometimes move. When the board amalgamated, they got rid of it, right? It was working for kids of all colors, all races, all ethnicity. But they pulled it. Sometimes success in an inner city neighborhood means, oh, we're going to take that somewhere else. Policy, magnet schools, brain drain certain neighborhoods. Magnet programs, IB, whatever you want to call it, tech, science, it brain drains certain neighborhoods that you pull the kids that would balance the school, and then you have really low scores. I'm not going to name the schools. You guys know what schools get stuck with that. And then they get a reputation, and they get labeled, and then nobody wants to go there because the policy created the magnet school programs, which is elite to fill the buildings in certain neighborhoods. So if a political or economically strong neighborhood, numbers are dropping, we're going to keep that school open. So we'll put a magnet program there. That's a board policy. The creation of the magnet program is keeping certain schools open and brain drain in certain schools, which fits into a certain stereotype, and it plays in the media and all the negative things, almost toxic in one neighborhood. Right? So all the kids who will create great EQA scores for grade 9 numeracy and grade 10 literacy is being pulled to these magnet programs. So policy has to be, again, looked at. What are you doing? How are you affecting these neighborhoods? Do you even care about these neighborhoods? Because they're politically weak, you walk over them.
Thank you. And I agree with everything that was said by our panelists. The funding part is very important, as we know, because a lot of our schools need money. Now, you could throw money at problems sometimes, but it won't fix anything. So while you're putting that money to the schools, you also need to get experts into schools that relate to the children that they're dealing with. As one of the panelists said earlier, you have a school with 98% students minority, and the teachers do not reflect that. So you have to bring teachers in and resources in that the children see themselves as, you know, a part of the narrative. They're a part of the heroes in the story. They're not just on the periphery. They're helping, they see themselves as doing something positive in society, while in our standard curriculum right now, they're always on the edge. We get a month maybe. Like for something like Black History Month, I don't think we should not have Black History Month, but we need to have Black History Month. If things were ideal, we wouldn't have to have these history months that we see for all the various cultures here. It should be something that's a thing that's celebrated all year. And this is why when Black History Month comes up, I don't get really excited at my schools, because I say, this is something we're working on for the whole year. We're not really just gonna work on it for this month. If you wanna highlight certain things, go ahead. So it's same thing for Asian History Month, Italian History Month. There's so many different months in the board. So we say, try to bring experts from all these areas, work on the curriculum so that it's something we do all year, and then it will create less conflict. Now for policy also, before you spoke, I'm glad you spoke before me, because I was gonna say one of the things I would change was the way they geographically place kids in different schools, meaning if you live in Jane and Finch, you have to go to Jeffries or you have to go to Westview, and you can't go to another school. And the only kids that were allowed to go to other schools were kids that had high scores, right? Now, here's the thing. There are parents that know their kids, and they'll say, okay, my son, I don't mind him going to Jeffries or Westview, but he hangs out with these kids in the neighborhood, and he doesn't pay attention when he's hanging with them. So I'm gonna send him somewhere else, for example, a Mackenzie or some school further down the road to go learn, and then when he comes back into the neighborhood, he can play with his friends. The parent goes to to Mackenzie, and the principal says, sorry, he doesn't live in this school neighborhood, so he can't go here. So policies like that do affect our families. And again, if things were equal across the board in the sense of spreading the wealth, we probably wouldn't have these issues. But now that it's not that way, we do have these issues. I remember when I was in grade 10, 11, and I moved to Scarborough. I used to go to Emory around the road there. I went to Scarborough, and I wanted to go to this school called A.Y. Jackson because the courses I was taking at Emory, they were offered there, but they weren't offered at George Vanier, which is the school from my neighborhood, which is a Toronto housing neighborhood, which is at Leslie and Shepherd. But here's the thing, though. In my little neighborhood, the kids from that neighborhood would have to go to Vanier, but the kids that were south of us, which is even further from the school, and north of us were able to go to A.Y. Jackson. Only our little pocket wasn't allowed to go to that school. Now, I was taking Spanish and a few other classes that were offered at Emory that were not offered at Vanier, and we brought that to the principal, and they said, sorry, can't come here because you don't live in this area. And my best friend at the time lived across the street in the houses, and he had a longer walk to go, but he was allowed to go to AY. I wasn't able to go there. So to tell you, these policies do have a large effect on our children, and we need to fix them in order for change to happen.
Wow, thank you. Such a great insights from all the panelists. You remind me of my school days because I went to 3 high schools in 4 years, one of them being A.Y. Jackson, Woodbine, and Winston Churchill Collegiate. And I think going to 3 schools in 4 years really opened my eyes to an equity lens because those cultures are very different. So it kind of is a good segue to the next question, that inclusion is a story of power. It's not simply you having a seat on this panel. Is when you show up, are you able to be who you are, from the way you dress, the way you do your hair, your mannerism, your culture? Can you be proud of it, or do you have to tuck that in and show up to work? And if you do, that means the power dynamics are not intended to see you or believe in you, but want you to conform to the identity that they want of you. So I think the next question, we really want to kind of go maybe from policy to some of the smaller action-oriented things we can do. How do we ensure voices of racialized Black parents and educators, as well as other minoritized identities? Because you can also think of it along the lines of religion, sexuality. So how do we ensure voices of minoritized identities are heard through our schools? We'll maybe start with the teacher voice.
I think first of all, we have to recognize that everyone in a classroom, and it might sound cliche, have value. And their culture or spiritual belief is part of who they are, it's part of their fabric, as it is for myself. I cannot help be who I am, right? If I shy away from who I am, I'm basically slapping my family in the face, right? My DNA, culturally, I can't help it, right? Sometimes when I get excited, my accent comes stronger, right? So I can't help it. But it also, for me, I think I'm in a really good position because of how I look and who I am. The kids will ask questions in my classroom. I make sure I do what the board wants me to do, but if they ask questions, it could be spiritual, religion, it could be, and we differentiate between spirituality and religion. It could be politics, but they are from all over the world, right? And I am in a really good situation because I think I understand enough, not all, enough, about how this world works with colonialism. And as soon as being a grade 8 teacher, it's part of the curriculum. So I could discuss or bring up any aspect of global history to the students in my class. And the door is open. But you have to know that you could do that and be free to do it and still be touching curriculum, right? And not hesitate, right? And the power is in each child to know their own history, and I encourage them to know their own history because it has value. And when you see there's value in yourself, you could walk taller. Your pride is there. You don't have to push it under the rug. So there's a stereotype of this neighborhood that it's mainly Black because that's what the media presents. But when you go into Jane and Finch School, you'll find there's probably 3 major races, right? Some form of East Indian, some are probably colonialized from Guyana as well as from India, all colonial groups. Africa is breaking into Caribbean, African from the continent, and then you have West Africa and Northeast Africa. And then you have an Asian community, which is Cambodian, Vietnamese. It is global. Regardless of how the media projects this neighborhood, it is global, right? The world lives in this neighborhood. And as a teacher, you have to see that fabric. It's the world. So everything that happens somewhere else affects these kids. Their story, their parents, why did they migrate? All that affects them. So you have to bring that out and have them feel proud. This is another opportunity to still be who you are, still learn about yourself and learn about this world. But we also have a responsibility to teach them about how this world works, the issues, the problems, you know. It's not an issue to talk to the kids about how the IMF works, how the IMF, along with Western governments, brain drain the developing world. International Monetary Fund, right? And how our government is part of that machine, right? Our government is part of that machine. I'm not telling them to go start a war, but I'm telling them be aware of your position and how you could therefore attain more by understanding what's around you. So in the classroom, because you have the world in front of you, especially when you're working in a, for lack of a better term, inner city neighborhood, which is really an American term that we kind of adapt and we use and label, you have the opportunity as a teacher to bring all that alive, you know, bring it to them. And yes, sometimes they don't get it, and then sometimes you'll find that they start teaching each other and realize they have more in common with each other as people. Not so much that I belong to one group. Yes, I belong to one group, but you know what? We got the same history. I have kids of Indian and Pakistani background that don't realize that at one time it was all India, right? Parents tend not to teach their kids sometimes when they've had bad experiences coming from someplace. They're trying to keep everything secretive, right? They don't want their kids to experience that, but it's part of who they are, right? So as teachers, part of our responsibility is to let them know where their root is so they could grow.
Maybe we'll go to this side, and then we'll come back.
I think one of the things that we are trying to work on with the TCDSB is parent engagement in schools right now. Parent engagement in our schools okay, so parent engagement, when you have a high parent engagement in a school, the studies have shown that you have more engaged students, you have students that are more accountable, higher graduation rates, better attendance. There's been a very strong link towards parent engagements in certain local school communities. What we see in other communities is higher socioeconomic school communities is a very high parent engagement rate. I've been to certain schools where you're looking at 20 to 30, sometimes 50 parents at any given parent council meeting. I've gone to some schools in our community where there's one parent. So one thing that I've been working on, and I know Trustee Mammoliti works on as well, is community engagement, parent engagement. How do we get parents to be more involved in their students' success, educational success? It's difficult. I'm going to go back to our parents are not reflected in the school dynamic, in the school community. So understanding their role is not communicated properly and effectively at this point. So what we're trying to do is foster a school community that they could feel safe in and that they could feel that their roles are valid. There are certain school communities, I'm gonna give a quick example where kindergarten or grade 1, there are certain school communities, I don't know about our community, but outside of our community where parents are encouraged to come on their kid's birthday and read a book. It brings the parents in, and they feel welcomed, and they feel like they belong, and it gives the child that sense of, they're excited. They're excited, and I've done that with my children in their school. Something that they look forward to, that they're proud of. I've tried to get something like that introduced in some of our schools. This is pre-COVID, of course, and I was hit with roadblocks. There was always a no, and I'm trying to understand why. Why is it a no? Why is it a no in my Jane and Finch schools, but it's not a no in, let's say, Etobicoke? We want parents to be involved. Why are we putting up walls? So breaking these walls down and making parents feel welcome, making them feel important, and making decisions with the parent community. That is one of the ways that we're going to grow as a community, in my opinion.
One of the things I often speak to, Canada is the most diverse country in the world. Toronto is the most diverse city in the world. But we don't celebrate that. We are a cultural mosaic. We are not a melting pot, but we don't celebrate that. Humber River Black Creek has incredible diversity in culture, but we don't see those street festivals across our city, and we don't celebrate it. For me, I view that a lot on leadership. That's on us. That's on the history of leadership. We have to bring that pride out of our community. We have to celebrate together. We have to bring our youth out to share each other's culture. When you share each other's culture, you build a respect, you build a love for each other, and that's where the inclusion comes from. We have to take a lot more pride in the diversity that we have in communities like Humber River Black Creek. And I would even challenge, we have to look at using terms like Jane and Finch, when the reality is, if you go down to Jane and Chalk Farm, or you go to other areas across our city, there is the same poverty, the same racism, the same marginalization. And we have to challenge that within ourselves. We need to celebrate diversity. We don't do it enough. Leadership, our job is to engage that. Get out of our comfort zone. If I'm Italian, I've got to get outside the Italian community and into communities I don't know as well. That's where the respect will come from, and that's what our youth are going to look at when they're looking at us as mentors or examples to follow. It's who do we surround ourselves with? Who are we celebrating? And if it only looks like me, I'm not doing my job as a leader, and I'm surely not doing my job as a leader in the most diverse city in the world.
Okay, so just to piggyback on what Ida said, a part of my mandate as an administrator is parent engagement, and I've spent a lot of time with this. So, as said before, the school is the heartbeat of communities, right? Schools are probably the safest place sometimes for students, especially certain neighborhoods where a lot of things happen due to socioeconomics and other politics that happen, right? So what you have to do is find a way to make parents feel welcomed in your school. Some parents are intimidated by the school system. I know my mom was when I was growing up in Toronto. Now, the thing is, what I do with my office staff, first of all, I tell them, a lot of parents, especially new immigrants when they come to Canada, they've been through a lot of unfriendly situations. The airport is not friendly, neither is immigration, and when they come to school with their kids, should be the most friendly place they come to, because they're gonna leave their kids with you for 8 hours, or how many hours they're there. They need to know that my kid's in a great place and I could come and talk to you, especially because they don't understand the system. Sometimes the kids understand the system more than their parents. The other thing we deal with is parents who have been through the system and are jaded. They weren't treated right when they went through, so they have this mistrust. So we have to learn to break that mistrust, and I've had to deal with a lot of situations like that. A new immigrant family will not have the same perception of the school system as someone that's been through it, because they're just here and they're learning, and they're gonna realize things aren't always what it seems. Now, for my school, and especially with my VP, I say this is something we gotta do. So if you have a child, for example, that's going through something that you know they're a good kid, they're smart, intelligent, and all that, but they're having some difficulties. The calls shouldn't be going home to say, oh, this child is bad, but what I do is I make these proactive calls. So So I call the mom or dad and I say, listen, need to talk to you about your son. What did he do? What did he do? Oh, he didn't do anything today. But I'm calling you today so I don't have to call you a few months from now to say, come pick him up. So we start building from there. So even during COVID, we're really not supposed to have parents in, but I've had quite a few parents in my office to have discussions about their child, because if I don't have these discussions now and we leave it and leave it and leave it, it's going to turn into a bigger problem. And you have an intelligent child, in a few years he becomes a behavioral child, and then he's stuck in that cycle for a very long time, and it's hard to break out of it. So I know it takes a lot of work from our angle. Sometimes we get home late at night, but at least I'm able to sleep at night knowing that the parents are giving me an input, and I know that this child has a chance of figuring it out before it gets to a point where they're a burden and no teacher want to work with them. So to sum up the question, to get voices of our racialized and black parents heard in our schools, we have to be more open. We have to invite them in. We have to invite them to parent council meetings. Even if they don't want to come, we say, okay, we're having it virtually. Could you join us? Even if you're not joining us every meeting, just come to some of them so you know what's happening. Another thing we've done at one of my schools is on that snow day, the snow day before this year that we had, there was a shooting in a building beside my school, and a young man died. And there were kids at my school that were actually playing in the hallway when it happened. So it was not a good situation. So there was a lot of fear in the neighborhood, and so on and so on. So in partnership with our community support worker, and we have a community support worker, former, sitting over there. I see him, he did some great work in our community as well. We started a book club in the building. So instead of having it at our school, we moved it into the building with permission from Toronto Housing. And the turnout for 6 weeks was excellent. We made it so that you don't have to be an excellent reader to come to join our book club, and it doesn't have to be a book. It's just going to be, we pick something to talk about, a topic, and if you have an article, if you have something that resonates with you, we'll talk about it. And that got a lot of parents to be a part of our group. And then the next year, our parent council increased by about 70%. And this year, we started off at my new school with about 3 parents. And right now we're at about 25. So you gotta open it up, and you gotta invite with no reservation. Say, okay, if you gotta go, you gotta go. And if you wanna talk to me beyond the meeting, we can talk. And if you open the lines of communication, the voices will be heard.
Oh, great. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's, all the conversation we're hearing has given us some examples. I want to give a big shout out to the parents that are here. I know the people, you can't see them. I don't know if you could turn the camera for a second if it's possible, but a lot of people are here on their Saturday. We can't do that, but there's a lot of them here. I could see the cameraman is getting stressed. But they are here, and we want to thank you for taking time out of your Saturday to be here. And I think it's a good segue to maybe we have 1 or 2 more questions. So I want to give you a quick story. I think the point you made about the good kid, bad kid, as an academic in 2016, 3 15-year-olds got shot, all in inner city communities in Toronto. And I remember picking up a newspaper, and on the front page in big capital letters, it said, "Why are all the good kids dying?" Which really made me think, if they were bad kids, did they deserve to die? Would they have got in the front page of the news or the back of the news with a little name and what happened? So this good kid, bad kid binary is definitely something we need to disrupt at every level. You can replace good kid, bad kid with good neighborhood, bad neighborhood, good school, bad school, right? Like, what is accountability? We throw these words around, transparency, but what does it actually look like is the conversations we need to have. Because if accountability is increasing my school's test scores, I can teach the test and do that for any school. But that is not what the critical thinking skills our students need to be successful in this day and age. So I had written this question, and as you were all speaking, I had to reword it, because I had written down, how do we change the narrative about Jane and Finch? And I realized we can try to change the narrative, and if it's hollow, it's not effective, because we can rename the neighborhood to University Heights, but if we don't change the conditions that are within the community, then it's ineffective, right? So I reword the question: how do we change the conditions in the neighborhood? And to give you an example is, we do these police raids every once in a while after the big shootings happen, right? But if we don't change those conditions, the next person up is gonna become the shooter. That's why the average age in shootings has gone from 25 to 20, because those conditions that gravitate youth towards violence, you know, the intersection of poverty and racism, they're not being eliminated drastically. So the question: how do we change the conditions in Jane and Finch? And this is kind of a follow-up to it, so you can kind of pick maybe which one you want to spend more time. Why are we not moving fast enough on many of the recommendations coming out of so many reports historically up to now? A great one would be the 2007 review of the roots violence that came out after Jordan Manners was shot. So do we really need another study and another report, another recommendation? Although you do want to read the report we just launched related to the Community School Initiative, but you know, how do we move faster on these recommendations and go from, once again, critique and identifying the problem to doing something about it? We'll start going this way.
That's a very loaded question. Thank you. Okay. Because we could be here for a while. I think that I'll go with the angle of keeping your elected officials accountable and making sure that your elected officials aren't working alone. It's about community partnerships and working with partnerships like Yaaace, working with partnerships. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to name them, but Black Creek Community Health Center, working in partnership with schools. Here's a perfect example. Trustee Mammoliti and I got elected at the exact same time. It was October 2018. It was very unheard of at the time for a TCDSB trustee to work with a TDSB trustee. There was always a separation of the two school boards. We didn't understand it. Everything that we've done in the last, since getting elected in 2018, we've done together, breaking down these barriers, breaking down these thoughts. These are all of our students. This is all of our future. Why is there this separation? Let's find a hub for Yaaace. It doesn't matter whether it's a TCDSB or a TDSB school. Let's make sure that these youth have what they need to succeed, that they're motivated, that they see themselves reflected. And you know, we're grateful that we're here in a TCDSB school, but it was the two of us that fought to make sure that they have a home. So it's really working together with different levels of government, and being accountable is what I think that my answer will be. Being accountable to you. You elected me to represent you. I work for you. So you and we will make the changes that need to be done by working together, by working with local community organizations, and being on the same page. I think that we've done phenomenal work. The work that we've done, we're now seeing other trustees doing the same in different parts of the city, and it's fantastic. And we're going to keep doing it because we get more accomplished together than we do alone.
Yeah, you know what, I'm going to build on that a little bit. I think it's really important that we look at things like a root cause analysis. We stop chasing stigma and symptoms. If somebody has a cold, getting more tissue paper isn't going to fix that problem, right? So we have to dig into the root cause. How do we do that? We have data. We have all kinds of data through the pandemic and before it, that if we sit down as collaborative stakeholder partners, as opposed to siloed off competitors, we can actually analyze and create a long-term sustainable plan that actually builds towards a goal. We have to sit down and review that together. We have to do it as entities coming together in a collaborative nature. What we've seen traditionally is siloed off leadership, which means we're not sitting down, we're not talking, we're not reviewing that information together. We have to look at the root causes to these problems. That's what feeds the stigma, and as long as we continue down the stigma road, we're never going to get to the issues that are actually creating the problems. We have to look out for our youth, and by doing that, we do it together. We work with community partners like Yaaace, with the TDSB, the TCDSB. We saw it through the vaccine rollouts, working with organizations like Humber River Hospital. These are all different entities that go into the buildup of society, and we have to work together at shared tables, speaking the same languages, and I'm talking data languages, reviewing the same pieces of information together so that we can strategically put in a plan that's actually going to be effective for our youth and change the course of our communities. That, to me, is a major, major area of growth that we can see, and it's very attainable if there's a desire to do so.
Well, I don't know if I'm solving anything, but more commentary. I think earlier, not really piggybacking, but you also mentioned earlier the red tape, right? Until we come to reality that these buildings, TCDSB, TDSB, are already paid for by tax dollars. They belong to the community. But that bureaucratic red tape treats it like it belongs to that entity that controls the board. It belongs to the community. The tax dollars already paid for it. Open the doors. Allow the community in. The bureaucracy is there. And why is the bureaucracy there? To maintain the status quo. Somebody benefits from the way it is right now. Who? You think about it. Somebody benefits from the status quo being maintained. Everything from crime rate to failure at school, somebody benefits. And it's usually the middle class and up. So I don't know if I'm really solving the question, answering the question. It's more commentary.
What do I say now? So here's the thing. If there's one thing I can say that could help make a change or change this narrative, is the word value. If you value something, you're going to pay more attention to it. If you value something, you're going to put in more work. So for example, the Jane and Finch community, I'm not an expert here, because Devon, when we were teaching, Devon came here and I stayed in the East. Now, I hear a lot of stories, but I've never really been in here. I know guys, I have good friends that are from here that are very successful. Now, the thing is, in the case of the Jordan Manor situation, I remember when this happened, I was actually doing my master's at York, and I wrote a paper. Actually, my thesis was basically on recommendations from this. And some of the recommendations that were brought out were great, and some I don't think so great, especially for the community. Give you one example. They were saying, okay, let's bring in dogs to search, to sniff in dogs to search the kids. We have a lot of Muslim students in our schools that do not mix with dogs. So how do you work that one, right? So there are so many arguments that came up in these discussions that we had. Now, again, there's a lot of excellence from this community, lots of excellence, and I'm looking at them right now, and there's so many that are not here. You hear about them all the time, but you know what? What sells is the idea that when something goes wrong, the media jumps on it, and that's what you hear. But you never hear about those guys that are toiling and laboring. Devon Jones, for example. Sometimes I call him, I say, dude, you're working too much. You need to take some time. Let's go do something else. He's like, nah, I got to go in tomorrow morning. These kids, I got to be there for them. And he's always here. So we don't hear about him on CP24. But the minute someone gets shot or something happens like that, you hear about it all the time. What happened to Jane and Finch this, Jane and Finch that. I think that narrative needs to change. I know you guys probably agree with me, but I'm just saying that's what we need to start with. And then moving from there, then we start investing in our neighborhood, and we start teaching our kids that, you know what, look at all the excellent stuff. The negative things is just a small percentage, but that's what we focus on. The other thing I'm going to say is, you only catch fish where you put your net. If you set all the nets in Jane and Finch, you're going to catch all the fish here. While there's a lot of fish in the other areas in the city, but no one is catching them because there's no net there. And I'm talking about policing as well, and I'll leave it there.
Great, thank you. I love that analogy. Being mindful at times, I'm going to kind of pose one last question. If you can keep it to a minute or so, I think that would be great. So I think one of the things about the community school initiative was that we really identified and we mapped out that what happens outside of the school hours is crucial. all right? Because even if you think about when a lot of shootings and violence happen, it's on evenings and weekends. And if we have intentional quality programming that is accessible and affordable outside of school hours, it does make a big difference. So thinking about your own narratives, you know, going from teacher to leadership in school principals, school trustees. You know, myself, I never thought I would get a PhD. I just thought that was way too much schooling, but here I was where life took me. But what advice would you give yourself 10 years ago, having seen so much and experienced so much? So kind of looking at your younger self, kind of this is more of a creative question, so we can light up the mood a little bit too. We don't want you to go home depressed. What advice would you give yourself? And then any final words to the members of the community who have shown up here and have tuned in through YouTube and Zoom and other platforms. So advice to yourself and any words to the larger community who is seeing this or who will see this later when we post it on YouTube. You look like you're ready to go, Ida.
Yeah, I'll take the first crack. I think that what I would tell my younger self is just do it. And I'm not trying to quote Nike, although it is, I've wanted to enter public service my entire life. I always knew that I was going to be a public servant. I love helping people. I love being part of initiatives. I don't like being there for a photo op. The most uncomfortable place I could ever be is here with a microphone in my hand. But thanks. But I think that I would have got into it a little bit earlier. I kept saying, you know what, maybe in 2 years. Oh, maybe I'm gonna get married. Oh, I'm gonna have a baby. I'm gonna have another baby. I had a third baby. But I think that really I wish I am doing what I'm doing now 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. I'm not sure what held me back. I think it was maybe I just didn't feel confident in myself. And the only way I felt, the only reason why I am where I am today is because somebody pushed me. And they said, if you're not going to do it now, when will you do it? And I'm very grateful for that person that pushed me. And I took a leap, and I'm very happy that I did. Because I know that we don't feel it yet. But I know that the work that we're doing is going to impact, and even if it only impacts one person, one human, I've done my job. So I'm going to continue, and I'm going to spread my net as wide as possible, going back to an analogy, and I'm going to make sure that I get as many people under that net as possible to make sure that they believe in themselves and they believe in their own future, because I wish I did in my own 15 years ago.
First of all, thank you to all of the community members, the parents, caregivers, guardians who are here today, speaking, listening, contributing. Thank you for having us in space as well, being able to give our perspective or feedback. I think for me, the one big piece I'd share with our youth or anybody in the room is to be proud of where you're from. I was born in Humber River, Black Creek, and I think I could have celebrated that more 10 years ago, more like I do today. I think speaking proudly of where you're from, speaking proudly of the community and your neighbors beside you goes a long way to other communities building that same respect. Setting that expectation beyond what others have instead to what we deserve. I think that's really, really important. And that comes from a self-pride. You have to be confident in where you're from. You have to be confident in your community in order to project that. And I think that's something I've learned, especially through working through public office, working through people, hearing and listening and doing my best to try and understand, building empathy into the work that I do. I think that's really, really a challenge, but something that we can do as a community. We come from, Humber River Black Creek is one of the most beautiful communities on the planet. We have to make sure everybody knows that, because when they hear it, they're going to pay more attention. So I think that's really important. Just be proud of yourself. Be proud of your culture. Be proud of how you were raised, where you come from, where your family comes from. And hug each other. You know, create the inclusive environment where everybody's free to feel that same pride, even if it's not the same path that I took.
Well, I think I have to go back a little bit more than 10 years because I'm a senior citizen of the panel. But I think, first of all, being a teacher was not my original goal in life because I never had a relationship with teachers that was like, oh, wow, you know, you make such a big difference in my life. Oh, do I want to spend a minute with you? I couldn't see myself as an adult being in a staff room with a room of teachers. That's just my experience. You did 3 schools, I did 4 high schools, right? Asked to leave a couple. But I enjoy doing what I'm doing. And one of the most interesting things for me about teaching is when somebody comes and visits me that I taught previously, which I still think is a little bit weird because I've never visited a teacher. I think I shared that earlier. So as long as I'm enjoying it, I'll continue to do it. The day I don't want to get up and go to work, I know that's it. So that's it for me.
Thank you. For myself, looking back 10 years ago, I guess, although I was an advocate for students back then, I wish I was as unapologetic as I am right now, because I'm at a point in my life now where I feel if I cannot speak for our children and stand up for what I think is right, and if I have to go to bed knowing I did something that I can't sleep at night, what's the point? So I'm at a point where I don't care if it comes down to it where I'm told, okay, well, you can't do this anymore, I'll just go find something else to do. I think I'm intelligent enough to do so. Now, going back, there were times when I saw teachers or people in schools doing things to other kids or saying things, and I don't think I stood up for them as much as I could have. And it's not because I didn't want to, but it's because of where I was. I was a poor young man that was trying to build myself up, and I didn't want to lose that opportunity to help my family and myself. But then after I got to a certain point and I realized that, but what's the point of doing that if I'm disappointing myself? I got to speak up, and then I started speaking up. And a part of my speaking up for our kids and advocating is part of why I'm sitting here now. Otherwise, I would have done something else. And to give you a quick story, I know it's a minute, about 14 years ago or so, Mr. Jones, Devon Jones, called me up and said, hey, yo, let's go to law school. And I said to him, I know you remember that, Devon. I said to him, let me think about it. And I thought about the balances, and I said to myself, because that's what I originally wanted to do. I wanted to be a lawyer. And then I said to myself, okay, well, what are you going to do? Help kids stay out of trouble, or help them when they're already in trouble? I think I'd rather stay and help them stay out of trouble. And then we ended up going to do our masters at that time, if you remember. So this is a journey. So again, for everybody in this panel, be unapologetic as much as you can. Stand up for what you believe in, and sometimes may mean that it may slow your path to where you want to be, but as long as you stick to that path, you'll get there. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And I think just to kind of bring it full circle, the system might not change in our lifetime, but I remind myself of someone who shared this with me. Maybe we can't change the world, but we can change someone's world. And I'm sure all of you through your daily interactions with kids, with other kids, you've made an influence, and that ripple effect can go far. The beauty of teaching is you never know how far it goes. Sometimes you never find out. I think for me, the piece as I've grown older, navigating different systems, I call it there's written rules and unwritten rules. And if you live in the hood, there's lots of unwritten rules. Is to kind of, as you grow older, you're very intentional of where you look for your validation. Like growing up, you're like, oh, if I get that A, that's a validation that I'm smart. But now I would say grading itself is a colonial practice. So we should actually get rid of grading, right? So I start questioning the processes in place that validate people or invalidate them. And that comes with life experiences, with who you are, your culture, your history, and you try to find your own roots, and that process is different. But ask yourself, where do you look for, and also in who, to get your validation? Sometimes we're in hostile relationships that we're trying to get someone to see us a certain way, but the best thing is to walk away because that person is holding you back, right? So it's a lot of pieces. I think there's no one magical solution. All the examples you gave, we need all of them happening. We need the voices of the community, from students, parents, everyone involved, because that's how we can amplify and center those voices. We're just gonna do an organic concluding remark to end the day. This was the last panel. If you've never seen how Devon Jones looks like, Devon, come up here to do the concluding remarks. You need to come on the mic. Come on the mic. Come on up, please. He pretends like he's shy, but he really is not. So I guess on behalf of the community school project, I've been a writer with Yaaace, for those that don't know, from 2007. I've been involved with the program. I was a camp counselor. I was a teacher. Now some researcher along with this project. So Devon wrote a reference letter for me to get into Teachers College under his basement, and I had to call him and I said, there's 3 different fonts here, you need to reprint it. But we go back a long time. We want to thank you once again. Please do check out the Yaaace website, as well as the project website called communitysschoolinitiative.com. It's not just a report. We've actually created infographics. We've created resources for students, parents, other stakeholders. And we don't want this to be the destination. This is the start of inviting you to be more involved with Yaaace, involving you to voice how you think you can be involved, how you think we can improve the programming at Yaaace. And we want to embed research into every aspect of it, because when we have proof of the impact and we go to the different levels of government, they're more likely to listen. So it's also being strategic about how we do it. With that, I thank all of you, and I'll pass it on to Devon Jones. I know if you're tired, you could sit down.
I mean, I don't know why Ardavan couldn't just do the closing remarks, but yeah, I mean, I think today was a very successful day. The key learning, like I always say, access, and I say access because I think that all students, sorry, I think that all students should have access to opportunities. They should have access to resources, and they should have access to become what they truly want to be or are destined to be. And too many times we see too many kids from too many communities who doesn't have access. So we have to change that. And I heard the word advocacy so many times, and we have to advocate. If systems are broken, we have to speak to that. We cannot continue to accept mediocrity and failure as acceptable. Like I said earlier today, I mean, we're talking about math and the fact that only 18% of black kids are achieving at the provincial level in math, at the grade 9 level. And there's no business that can run with an 82% failure rate. If 96% of the jobs or employment or vocation requires that you have a background in math, and only 18% of black kids are passing math, that's a tragedy. It's an indictment. So we have to learn to speak up. Like Rohan said earlier, like you have to be unapologetic. I say what I want to say, when I want to say it, how I want to say it, to whoever I want to say it. I'm at that stage in my life where I don't bite my tongue for nobody, like Biggie Small said. But you know what I'm saying? Like, but it's the truth is that we can't watch. Listen, for the kids in our communities who are failing, we know what the outcome is. We see the outcome. So we can't stand there, watch this failure, and it's not acceptable. So the fact is that we got to continue to advocate. We got to continue to build pathways. And if systems aren't working, while they fix those systems, we create proxies on the side that works for a community, that's reflective, that addresses the issue with let's work with allies in those systems to build those contingencies. All right. So, what I say, thank you all for coming, and we're not done yet because we have one more conversation today with our amazing trustees. Thank you all for coming, and as parents, you have to demand the best for your children, because if you don't say to systems, that's not good enough for my child, your child will get what they get. So you have to be political, right? The world's political. If you are folks in politics, that advocates for your kids, make sure they're elected. knock doors with them, drop flyers for them, make sure you vote for them, get people to vote for them. Like, the world is very political. So when we have allies that will make sure they're here on a Saturday on their time. So we have to make sure that we're adamant about how we go about the business of our children. My children are serious business. So are yours. So you can't accept mediocrity and failure as the standard. That can't be the standard. So we got to fight, because if you don't, you got to fight. What's more important than fighting for your children? You got to fight for what they need and what they require. And with that said, I am hoping, like, for example, I expected way more Yaaace parents in this thing today, right? But it's what it is. And for those who are here, you make sure next time we have an event, you pull 1, 2, or 3 Yaaace parents with you, because this also is not acceptable. All right. So I thank Ardavan and the amazing team, Sally and Bryce, for doing this. The Teach Us Some Spirit of Math, the Yaaace parent, the Yaaace community, all our amazing funders, Laidlaw, the Pinball Clemens Foundation, the Ministry of Education, Laurier was a part of this initiative. Who am I missing? We thank everyone. Black Creek, one of our partners. Sony, is giving us all this technology to use and document things properly. We just got to keep going. And a good friend of mine, his motto is be more. And all of us, if we live by the motto be more, we will be more, and our children will be more. So we're going to demand excellence of ourselves, and we're going to live on the motto be more. Thank you.
That's a wrap.